After the American Revolution and the birth of the United States, the British were somewhat unhappy, and many there never really got over the loss. So why was it then that over the next century the British never made any attempt to retake some or all of the United States? Why simply accept that it was gone forever? So in the immediate aftermath of American independence, Britain wasn't really in a rush to change anything. Well, the new government across the pond wasn't exactly a high-functioning one. Its new leaders couldn't agree on how the new country would operate, which meant that until new rules could be written, most of the old ones stayed in force. Meaning that there was a lot of money to be made without the cost of running the place, which was a bonus. Now, eventually the US would draft its constitution, which would then limit foreign trade. This wasn't a good enough reason to declare war though, and Britain wasn't actually that worried about America's continued independence. You see, the prevailing belief in Parliament was that monarchy was the most natural form of government, and that as such the new American Republic was doomed to failure. Throughout the Revolution and shortly afterwards, many American revolutionaries actually saw themselves as English, or at least close to it. And in London, the belief was that they'd soon learn the error of their ways and move to bring back a monarchy. And since there were no American nobles, they'd inevitably have to turn to Britain, and who better than King George? And from there, the slow but inevitable process of reincorporating America into the empire would begin. Now, obviously this never happened, but given Britain's own flirtation with republicanism in the 17th century, it wasn't an unreasonable belief. Now, shortly after the Constitution was signed, France had itself a revolution, and between then and 1815 was in a constant state of war with Britain. As such, the British had more pressing issues, which led to it impressing sailors sailing under the US flag. This led to the War of 1812, and it was the last time that Britain could have realistically retaken some of the United States. So, did it try? Well, yes. Lord Liverpool, the Prime Minister at the time, wasn't trying to conquer all of the United States, but he did want to expand Britain's holdings at the expense of the US. You see, the border between British America and the US wasn't really well defined, and the British wanted to bring the border to here and annex Maine and turn it into the colony of New Ireland. The British had occupied much of the area during the war, and so long as the rest of it went well, it was believed that the Americans would simply give it up. But during the peace negotiations, Britain never asked for a single inch of territory. So why not? Well, the first reason was that London's primary concern was the redrawing of the map in Europe to prevent future wars becoming Britain's problem. The primary concern was that France wouldn't accept the changes and that war would begin again. As such, it was decided that Britain would offer a return to pre-war everything, and the Americans agreed. In the decades and century after this, British attention was firmly focused on expanding in India and later Africa, as well as the looming confrontation with Russia in Central Asia. As such, North America took a back seat, and by the mid-19th century the US was far too great a power for the British to ever risk war without potentially losing Canada, and so they did nothing. And so the dream of reincorporating a single inch of American territory was dead forever. I hope you enjoyed this episode, with a special thanks to my patrons: James Bizanet, Kelly Moneymaker, Sky Chappelle, Kartoitska, Anthony Beckett, Rod D. Martin, Yuduan Wang, Marcus Arsner, YN Hockey, Alex Schwinn, AF Firefly, Captain Psydog, Spencer Lightfoot, Gustav Swan, The McWhopper, Shuenin, Marvin Cassow, Winston Kaywood, Spinning 3 Plates, Andy McGeehee, Kamoon Yoon, Calling Dr. Howard, Dr. Fine, Dr. Howard, Todd Short, Copper Tone, Maggie Patskowski, Words About Books Podcast, Jim Stromberg, Miss Izet, and Charles the First.